awareness is a really powerful thing because awareness is actually opening up to what's there. And if we don't believe that something is there, then
Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Hip here, coming to you again by himself. Well, not by myself, just without any of my co-defendants. We're bringing Mr. James Wightman back again for part 2 of this weird thing that we talk about in our industry and in the world in general called money, and why is it so weird, and what are some fucking solutions we can do to just get that icky stigma of you're a bad person if you have it, or you have to ask for it, or if you charge it. And I am by myself, like I said. Mr. Klimmer is out and will be joining us later in this episode. So, yeah, let's get started with this. How are you doing today, James?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. I've already started listening to the other episode, and so I feel like there's so much that we get to build upon. I'm pumped. I'm pumped.
Man, me too. And I recently joined a new social media platform called Circle, and there was a well-known tattoo artist in the industry that's trying to make moves and change the industry and leave tattooing better than he found it, just similar to like we are. And I've joined it, and I shared this week's podcast on there, and I just noticed before we started recording that he said every tattoo artist needs to listen to this episode. So I'm really excited to like see what part 2 brings, And, thank you so much for coming on again, man. We really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. First, that is amazing to hear. Really love that. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I think it's, I think the work that you guys are doing in your industry, and just for, people that love you guys and love the wisdom that you're sharing, it's so applicable to so much of life. And yeah, really love what you're doing.
Man, and I appreciate that. I live by the saying that I can't keep what I got unless I give it away. And over the process of investigating and reverse engineering my personal relationship with money, and how freeing it has become to see that, like, these limiting beliefs that I put on it and the stigma that I attached to it, that I was taught by misinformed people. Once I let those go, how much more freeing it is, and how I'm able to be a better giver. And it's like, I want everybody to experience this shit. So yeah, we're totally gonna like give it different platforms and ways and means and different understandings and views from people like yourself that like have a good grasp on it, but still are always like learning more about it.
Yeah, I love the word that you use. Two words. One is belief, and then the limiting beliefs. I remember a mentor of mine always said limiting belief is like sin in the personal development world, right? Like, I have these limiting beliefs. And one of the things that, for anyone listening that could be really helpful is what I had to learn, and what a coach shared with me, because I'd look at all these different books. I'd try anything, right? I'd look at Dave Ramsey, I'd look at YNAB, I'd look at all these money management aspects. And then I'd also, read books on how to feel value, how to bring in more. And some of it was affirmation. Some of it might have even been praying over money. And it felt very confusing. It almost felt like this entity. And the thing that was really useful was a coach that said, get rid of all your beliefs around money. And I was like, oh, like the limiting beliefs, just try and get rid of them. And he said, no, just all beliefs, good beliefs, bad beliefs, just have no beliefs around money. And I was like, at first I was like, what the fuck do you mean? Because I got like books, like piles of books on money. I got all this different stuff. And he would just go, he goes, you don't have beliefs on other stuff. He goes, you don't have beliefs about paint. he's like, I'm not doing my affirmations on paint, hoping that the paint will, will it be at the store? Will it arrive? Will it dry? And I was like, that's true. I'm feeling a little silly right now, kind of thinking about that. But it felt like this thing that was really, really charged. And so that was something that would like just hit me to my core.
Dude, I really appreciate that because holy shit, I don't like air or water,
Right.
food. I don't pray for these things. Well, paint. You said it best with paint. I don't do daily affirmations about paint.
Right.
It is, and when I need it, I go and get it.
Mm-hmm.
And having that same kind of like, just, I don't know, would you say it was like just knowing that it'll be there when it's needed, and it comes and goes? Because I mean, ultimately, it's energy. It's just in a tangible form of paper with dead people on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
all it is, but it's energy. If I smile at you, you smile back at me. It's just a transfer of energy. And I didn't get really in depth with like understanding money and like buying books and stuff. How my journey kind of started was like first like really identifying what abundance means, and then noticing where like I lacked it everywhere. And like if you look up the definition of abundance, it's like there is no lack. Now, granted, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong, and you can like attract a lot of abundance of bad shit or a lot of an abundance of limiting beliefs. But
Right.
when I went into the journey of like what abundance was, I had to look at all that to the point to where still like this shirt. So I got my I don't know how old you are, if you remember Inspector Gadget, but he would
Oh
always,
yeah. Yeah.
so you remember he'd go to his closet and he'd have the same outfit. Well, I pretty much do too. And I have these polyester shirts because I work out a lot. And this one I've had hanging in my closet with a tag on it for, I don't know, 6 months. And I was about to not take the tag off and put it on. And then I had to catch myself with that abundance. And I'm like, wait a minute, I bought it for a reason. I didn't buy it so it would keep, the coat hanger company. I bought it to wear it. Why have I just continued to let it sit here?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because like that lack mentality. So it's becoming more aware to me just how much of lack that I'm in, to the point to like even eating. I was taught to always clean your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And I will do that to a point of like, and have done that to a point of like obesity. So I would pay attention to things like that, and just money. If you're an adult, you have to deal with money. So that started pulling in, or I was having awareness to it while I was going with this journey with abundance. And I started realizing things that like, man, money's not bad. It's the certain people who get it might be bad. But I mean, I'm kind of
Right.
grateful for money and people that have lots of it, because like if the rich didn't fund this and sponsor this thing would be like $10,000 for us normal folk to have, But thankfully, there were people with money that invested in it to be able to give us a manageable price to where it's affordable for everyone. And I just appreciate you talking about that. You don't do mantras about paint, and money
Yeah.
is no different than paint. It's just the meaning or the beliefs we put behind it. And I appreciate you saying that your mentor told you to like forget all beliefs, like to start one, clear all meaning away from something, and now you have a blank canvas to build and what you want money to mean to you.
Definitely. And I think there were so many amazing things that you just shared. So thanks for, even just like opening that up and sharing your journey and your experience, because one of the key things that you shared that really stuck out to me is there's this idea of both awareness and what we think is available to us. And I'm immediately thinking of two different people. It was kind of like one after the other the past couple weeks. So there was someone else that I was speaking to. They're in their 60s, and it's a woman that had always wanted to get into a performance arts school when she was younger. And there was a group of us, and she was sharing that um, she was afraid she wasn't going to get in, and ended up not applying. And people in the group were kind of like, oh, okay. And I just kind of had a smile come to my face, because in my mind, I was thinking of, I don't know, if I kind of think of things sometimes as like as just like a joke or something funny. And in my mind, so they turned and they said, oh, what are you smiling about? And I kind of burst out laughing, and I was like, it's funny how we as humans work. Oh, I'm afraid I wasn't going to get into the performance arts school, so I didn't apply. So
Which
I
is
didn't, I cut
guaranteeing.
myself. Yeah, like I cut
Yeah.
myself from getting in, right? Sorry, I missed what you said.
No, she's guaranteeing that she's not going to get in by not even attempting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so she's the one. They didn't stop her from getting in. She's the one that stopped herself from
Yeah.
getting in. And I noticed, that occurred again with a client that I had spoken to earlier this week, where they were sharing. They're about to take this next step, and they said. I think having conversations with people they said, I'm afraid I'm going to feel desperate and uncomfortable, and that I won't make enough money. And I said, well, if that's what you believe, then that will definitely happen.
Right.
We don't have to not have fear to ride a bike, and watching YouTube videos and reading books is not going to substitute the process of actually riding the bike. If we're going to ride the bike, we're probably going to fall off, or something's going to happen, or if we learn a language, we're going to say the words wrong. And it's being kind to ourselves, having care, and having the awareness, right, of just what we're thinking or what the beliefs are. So as you were speaking, and you said that there could be a belief of, having to finish the plate, and then believing that so much that it, bordered on obesity. What began to emerge, which I think is really useful, is awareness. There was awareness that, oh, there's a belief here. Here have been the results of the belief, and doing your best to have some love and kind and caringness for yourself to work through what you've now discovered. And so it's never not making the mistake, never not being wrong. It's just having enough love and care for ourselves to treat ourselves kindly, right? Like if the kid falls off the bike, it's not like, oh, you piece of shit, you're the worst bike rider in the world. It's like, oh my gosh, you're okay. Like, we'll go at it again. How could we do this? What could we do a little differently this time? And so just, even if we didn't have kindness growing up, we can at least probably find a speck of kindness that we've experienced in our life to at least reflect that for ourselves, to say, let me try and bring that to myself.
And you were speaking almost as like an on-watcher watching a kid ride a bike and fall. And of course, we're not like, oh, you stupid piece of shit. No, we like encourage them, like, hey, it's cool. It's par for the course. You just get up and try again. And when you were saying like, oh, you're the worst bike rider ever, I was thinking like, yeah, but me being the little kid, I'm instantly saying that in my mind. And it's like, those are things that I've had to overcome. So it reminded me of like a chase for perfectionism, which as an artist, there's so much talent in the world, not just in tattooing, but in everything, even what you do. Like what you do takes talent. What Mike does takes talent. And if you're someone that's like chasing a dream in a particular field like tattooing, and I can speak on personal experience, like it's me and my limiting beliefs that get in the way. And you talk about showing or remembering a time of like care or compassion that was extended to you. And it's like, I wonder why it's so hard for us to do that for ourselves. Because if I talk to you the way I talk to myself, we wouldn't be cool. Actually, I would probably be facing a lawsuit. And it's just, I wouldn't have friends, if I talk to people the way I talk to myself. And that compounded on top of like, well, just that alone, it ain't even got to be compounded with anything else, is a big fuel to like, can I charge this much? Am I a bad person? I'm not even factoring in the years of programming of misinformed information from misinformed people, I was told, like parents. I learned once I'd gotten clean and started to gain some success being a tattoo artist that like anyone in the world I can run my idea or like my dare or my risk taking business adventure to is fine. Just do not tell my parents, because instantly, what happens? Be careful. So it's like, this is where I came from, and this is where my beliefs are about money. Like, I remember if I left the fridge door open too long, like 1/10 of a penny was spent, and all of a sudden I'm bad because I'm heating the entire neighborhood or whatever it might be. Yep. And so it's like, I have to factor that in and remember that. And I know I'm not the only one. I mean, you're shaking your head in acknowledgement, because like, yeah, you probably experienced the same thing like many of our listeners have. So we've got awareness, giving ourselves some compassion. Like, if there was a simple place for our listeners, and me included, because for everyone listening, before last week's podcast, me and James were talking before we started, and he suggested that I carry around a certain amount of money with me, just to kind of like rewire neural pathways. And I do, and have been for the last week, carrying around the exact amount he said. That's actually a little more, just because I like to have a little bit of money with me, but I purposely got out this particular amount. I've been carrying it with me. Because it's a suggestion, and it ain't my practice life, and I'm trying to like grow and learn and have a better and more respectable relationship with money. So I listen to people that have what I want. So with awareness, showing ourselves a little bit of compassion, what is like a good start to get the ball rolling with being friends with money?
Yep. And I think that's a great opener, right? Because we want to look at things really as best we can, really practically. And so this idea that you were speaking with, right, of how we can speak to ourselves internally, a lot of times, especially growing up, that is reflected or mirrored somewhere, or we learned it from somebody. Because typically, as we notice with kids, they're sort of like these little barbarians, right? Just kind of going around, and they're never really against themselves. And in fact, they're usually for themselves, right? Like, let me crawl on the counter and get the candy. And depending on, we don't choose our set of parents. We're simply able to work with what we got. And this idea of that kindness, what I would say is, sometimes when we can speak to ourselves not so nicely, we can often want an external frame of reference, right? Of, let me run this idea by someone, or let me just talk to them. And it can be helpful to hear those encouraging words from somebody else. And if that is really useful, continue with that. What may be useful to develop is an internal frame of reference. So this is where the being kind to oneself really starts. And it just begins with the words that we use. I mean, how is a word made? We spell it. And so any words that we use, it's like these spells that we're just casting around. And they're the beliefs or affirmations, really not really affirming, but they're the words that we're placing in our world. And so what we say to ourselves internally matters. And I don't think, some people go to therapists, or sometimes they do really deep healing work. I'm not negating those things. I think one of the best things we can do, though, and I do this regularly because, I still find myself, sometimes I worry about things. Sometimes I can say unkind things. And it's been a continual process of the awareness of when we can catch it. And when we're first in this process, it might be like a thing where we double down, right? We hear ourselves saying something not so kind, and then we say something unkind again to try and negate it. And so when we right, like when we catch it, what we can do is just really pause. And if you're on your own and if you're in your own room, I recommend saying it out loud. And
the negative thing.
So what you're going to say out loud is really simple. It's just going to be, I love you, and you can let go now. I got this. Because it's almost as if there's some part of ourselves that, and this is a whole other thing called parts work. But for the sake of this, it's as if there's a part of ourselves, maybe an old part, might have even come into an existence when we were 8 years old, 12 years old, whenever. And the way that we learned to deal with something was to speak to ourselves this way. Maybe it was to get ourselves going or to make progress. And so now we have a new awareness that maybe what served us once in the past is no longer serving us the way that we want. And so when you catch these unkind words, you can just bring kindness, right? Kindness isn't something that we have to go into the depths of the sea to search for. We know what kindness looks like, and so we get to test it out. You can just say, I love you. You can let go now, and I got this. And that's really what you're doing, is you're bringing that kindness to yourself. And if you need to say it internally, you can. And what you'll start to notice is it may feel a little odd or a little silly at first. And the more that you do it, you'll feel like an opening or just like an easing up. And pretty much 99% of the time when I do this with clients, they're like, oh, the voices stopped, or I feel calm now, or I'm not freaking out. And so I was talking to someone the other day and they said, oh, I feel like I'm going to have to do this every 5 minutes. And then they believed like there was something wrong with them. And I'm like, no, absolutely. When you're first starting something, you may have to do this every 5 minutes. And there doesn't need to be any beliefs around that. Just know you're testing whether it's useful for you. Instead of trusting, just test. I'll pause there just to see like, what did you get from that? How did that land for you?
Well, so I appreciate it. And as you're talking, man, I'm digging it all. And I'm just like, I tried to put myself in the shoes of our viewers, and they're like, wait a minute, isn't this money? How does any of this have anything to do with a relationship to money? Mm-hmm. But I totally fucking get it, because it does all start with internal beliefs and being and where we're at. And damn it, I lost it. You had said the individual that felt weird or like there was something wrong with him, because I'm gonna have to do this every 5 minutes. When you said that, I was thinking like, that's good. I would usually have to do that like every 15 seconds, because it almost, internal work kind of reminds me of, and I don't mean to say this to put a belief to it, but it may be a limiting belief, but it's like whack-a-mole or a cat and mouse. Mm-hmm. Because it's like a thought comes in, I'm driving down the street, it's negative. Subconsciously I'm letting it ride, and I realize it, and I'm like, hey, okay, I love myself, it's all right, I got this. Get back on track. out of nowhere, 15 minutes has passed, and 10 of those 15 minutes I'm subconsciously digging at myself. And it's like constantly being aware and staying on track is almost a full-time job. I would say it's more than a full-time job. And it can and has like worn me out, but also that could just simply be me putting too much meaning and belief into it, and just not being, if this makes sense, being too much of a thinker versus being the observer, because I've heard that a lot. I can't control my thoughts, and they go where they go, and I should be with a place I shouldn't be. I'm working on being in a place where I can let them just come and go as they please, and they don't mean anything. So I appreciate the tool of like saying it out loud, because, the thoughts in one realm or dimension, it's in our mind. But then saying it out loud is bringing it into this realm also, because when I speak, I can hear my voice in my own head. So it's like declaring it in two different realms, and you're bringing it into this world, which is tangible. And if there was someone else around, they could visibly hear it. That doesn't make sense. They could audibly hear it.
Yeah. So a couple things that I think will be useful in terms of how this plays into money. The way that money is made, right? So they have their business, they're doing tattoos, they're creating more clients. A lot of times they know the actions to take. It's the thoughts and the feelings that come up in the process. So the reason why this is so useful is, instead of perfection, right? Because we know that perfection is like a horizon. It's always moving. We never quite reach it. Even when we do reach our goal that we wanted in the past, our present one is further along because it's evolved. And so what we know that we can do is make the progress. Just as, the kid on the bike may fall off in the beginning, it may be wobbly. Just as they're having these conversations, they're taking the actions, or they're attempting to take the actions, being kind to themselves and speaking kind words. And they can play around with the kindness to themselves. So it doesn't have to be the exact words that I said. What that's doing is it's helping bring kindness and love to whatever is being experienced. And that's what makes it possible to almost feel like a reset, or at least feel like we're more in charge and can take the action that we want. And because, feeling 100% is not a prerequisite to progress. And so that will help them make the progress step by step, right? Little steps create big leaps. And at the same time, what you'll notice about this, it isn't a practice of here's the thought and let me try and fix it. Just as if we could picture this as sort of like just a young version of ourselves that's almost having a reaction to something unexpected, or it's just a response that they know. Just as if a little child has, or a kid has a challenge. Usually they don't need like the exact solution or the exact fix. They just want to know like that they're okay, and almost always they start to calm down. It's a similar thing here. What we're doing is instead of having to fix each thought, we're just bringing kindness and care to ourselves, so that what we're doing, instead of thinking there's something wrong with us, you'll gradually reach this state. So even if you notice the thoughts, you'll start to feel okay. They won't carry as much of a charge. And it, as I was about to say as men, but maybe as as a thinker or someone that maybe analyzes, our habit is to look at this thing and let's try and fix it, and we'll solve it. And so really what we're doing is it's almost like a bug bite. If we get a mosquito bite and we try to itch it, it actually gets worse, even if we are feeling like it needs to be itched. When we let it be, it actually, without needing to get rid of it, it actually heals. Same thing with the thoughts coming up. If we can just let them be and know that we're okay, they'll start to have less of a charge. So I know I just went through a few like mental maybe loops there. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me acknowledge this. I appreciate you because I've noticed you did this in last week's podcast and you're doing it now, and I fucking love it because it shows just the level of communication you're on. But you'll speak on some things and then you'll stop and then ask from commentary from me, and I appreciate that because communication is a thing that I'm trying to be more aware of and be better at. So I really appreciate you doing that, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so to me, it sounds like doing this verbal act of kindness to myself when I'm having these thoughts is slowly or subconsciously training myself and giving me permission that, hey, you're human, we all do this, and it's all right. Just because this thought comes up and it triggers this feeling doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. And it kind of, like you said, it takes the sting out or the shock out of it, and it doesn't hold as much weight. Which, in proper situations, because we're cognizant, we'll know when it's an emergency. But for the most part, because I journal, I try to every morning, and a lot of things I'll do is like I might feel off or melancholy and I won't understand why, and it can be something simple like, okay, I went to Vegas a couple weeks ago, and I was explaining to my daughter, because she gets anxiety when something's off, and I'm like, a lot of times with me it's usually because of something small. But just because it's small doesn't mean the feeling attached to it isn't. So I had like a level of unease and unrest, and I got on the plane and I landed in Vegas, and then I text her and I was like, or I text my wife and I was like, I know why I was feeling weird. And she's like, why? I'm like, because I forgot some of my hygiene and my AirPods because I was doing a Zoom call while I was there. And I was like, subconsciously, something was off, and I knew it, and I couldn't remember what it was, but it had me uneasy. It caused me to not be present on the ride to the airport. It caused me to just kind of be irritated sitting on the plane. And then once I finally figured out what it was like, geez, like that was it. And it caused all this emotional turmoil and internal controversy. So I'll write in my journal a lot of times to try to reverse engineer these feelings. And what I find out is the feeling feels big. I'm turning a molehill into a mountain. But when I reverse engineer it and find out what it stems from, a lot of times it's nothing bad, or it's not that big of a deal. It's just that the feeling is there. And a lot of times when those feelings stir up, I can have all the knowledge and logic in the world about something, but it goes right out the window because emotions are now involved. So I appreciate this like act of kindness because it's diluting the feeling some and letting me know that like just because you feel this way doesn't mean that you feel this way, if that makes sense,
Yep. That makes perfect sense. And it's what it's doing is it's putting you back in charge, because when it comes to feelings or thoughts, they're kind of these invisible things that when someone's trying to grow, there's so much different personal development work and healing work out there. And, I think all of it's worth trying. It's just sometimes it can almost turn into like this rabbit hole where it's kind of like one thing after the next. I've been there myself, and looking at astrology and human design and like all these other things, or then there's just a million ways of doing things, and there's contradictory ways. And what this does is it puts you back in charge. It's really simple. So you get to be the adult for yourself, right? That we probably always wanted. And at the same time, it allows you to feel more balanced, to look at things logically, and I would say it's this idea of testing. You get to test what works for you. And there are a million ways to do things. So, if someone's been listening to this podcast and they have found something really useful from someone else, and maybe I'm saying something contradictory, I would just say, test for yourself, and whatever is useful, use that. Once you test it, we don't know if it's useful until we use it. And on top of that, our needs and our evolution and our journey is shifting and changing. So what may be useful now may be not as useful later on. And so it's a continual growth process, and always just acknowledge your own growth.
Man. Yeah, that's beautiful. And like you said, people that analyze, there's so many options. That's why I appreciate like a simple, practical way to going about things. And I appreciate people like you in my life that can always remind me that, because it's funny. Sometimes I'll give a suggestion to someone that's real simple and practical, only for 2-3 months down the road to go, and then they say something to me and it's so profound, and I'm like, dude, where'd you hear that? And they're like, well, you told it to me like a couple months ago. And I'm like, there's no way I said that. And they're like, yeah, totally. And I appreciate it, because it's like, yep, always keep it simple and keep it practical, and that's usually the best outcome, because already just that M word, it fuels a lot of feelings and emotions attached to it. So instead of like letting these false smoke and mirror beliefs around money cloud what it really is, just plain and simple, paper, energy, let's get to the simple and practical way to deal with it. And that has been super helpful in this journey. And I look forward to seeing like just what else this can grow into, because ultimately my desire and my end goal is to get really fucking rich to help other people. Like, I think it would just be bomb to I don't know, maybe I'm at a tattoo convention, and while I'm there, I pass a battered woman's shelter, and there's a lady that just went in there that I find out mysteriously that has 5 kids and has no place to go, and I can just anonymously like pay a mortgage off in her name, and then I just disappear, something like that, to be able to have fuck you money, to be able to do, to send my parents to fucking Abu Dhabi if they wanted to go for 3 years with not a dime in their pocket, and it's all on my wallet, would be amazing. That when a need is needed, it can be met because I have the ability or the warehouse to do so. And I know that like getting to that point, I have to be freed up internally to even be able to start receiving downloads of like blessings, knowledge, proper beliefs.
Definitely. And I think you're right. It's important to be really practical, because especially in this process, it's really easy to find things that are academic. And I used to, compare myself to them. I remember I was watching, I think someone talk about something, and I turned to my partner, Ellie, and I was like, wow, I just feel like, I'm not as good of a communicator. And she goes, oh, they're just really academic. And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, she's like, this person talks about the academic, right? The almost like the high level stuff of, oh, here's how the brain works, and you got this thing and that thing. And I may have found it cool to know, but it actually wasn't applicable. And what's practical is usually applicable. So it makes it possible to really use it right away, to implement and to play around with it. So it makes it really clear. And so what I would encourage, just from what you're sharing on money and being able to contribute in that way, I think that's actually really important for anyone listening, is for them to tune into what are the ways that they would want to use the money once they have it. Because what happens is most people, if they were to get money, they actually don't even know what they would do with it. And by knowing what you would want to do with the money, how you would want to spend it, it starts to rewire a part of the brain that makes sense in terms of, oh, I need to make this amount of money in order to do what it is that I want in my life. And knowing that that's 100% okay, the way that you are going to want to help someone and the way that someone else is going to want to spend their money to help others is going to be different. So not falling into the cultural hypnosis of, here's your money and here's where your money should be going, because that's not motivating. You want it to be something that's important to you. So for you, like you said, maybe paying off someone's mortgage or helping them, that you see that for you would know that that's the difference that you're making. Because the real difference that we make is not like, it's not like a celebrity and they're shown on TV. The real difference that we make is with the people in our life and the people that we connect with, and the difference that we can make right now. And by tuning into that, it continues to grow. And so, just looking at that practically for someone, where does money come from? Some people might say it's a tree. It's made up of molecules. Money comes from other people. And how do you then have them give you money? Well, you want to solve a problem that they're experiencing, that they feel compelled to do that. So in this case, they meaningfully are interested in a tattoo, or they've always wanted to do it and it would make a great difference. And so having those conversations is going to compel someone to provide money. And the more conversations that they have, it's going to make it possible to have more clients, to then be more selective, to charge more, to make more money. And there's all different levels of people. And so as long as you make progress, you will always be moving up in terms of the people you're able to connect with and communicate with, and that have the money to pay. Because if you go to someone on the street and you're asking for $3K, they're probably gonna be like, I wish I had $3K. And so there's an element there of like having a balance of just know who you're talking to, be of service. And the more you're of service, the more people you'll connect with, the more money that'll eventually come back.
When you were talking about the person that was academically like speaking or sharing, and you said that the word of the day seems to be practical and practicality.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I appreciate that, because that's a great word to live by. And you said that, I think you said it was, if it's practical, it's applicable. And that's true, because like if you take something and you get to the simplistics of it, the practicality of it, what that is done, and this is my experience as well, is it allows me to be or to do it in an authentic version of a way that only I can do it. Now, granted, we can be superficial and say, yeah, but everything you do, only you can do it that way, and only you did it that way. But on an artistic level, like, and Matt talks about this a lot. Like, we had a coworker that worked with us. His name was Chris Powell. He's a fucking amazing artist. He's a sweetheart. And he owns his own shop with his wife, 30 minutes up the road. And the way he would deliver a message to a client in a consultation was just like real chill and monotone, where someone like Matt is like skipping rainbows and happy day, yeah, woohoo. Where I don't know what mine is. I don't, kind of blunt and goofy a little bit, but each of us individually carry our own message and power and value and authority. And a lot of that is because we were taught to look at the practical way of like, one, what we're doing, we're building value. we already know what we offer. So we're going after like the why, and genuinely wanting to know the clients why they want this, and can we help them with it? And if we can, then we carry our message and then give the rates, and we build value properly. And something that I was wanting to touch on with you too, and we could go right into it because I was starting to stumble on it, is like, one, not all money is good money. And what I mean by that is like, for the tattoo artist that is like applying this and they're taking practical steps and they're showing themselves compassion and they're being aware of their limiting beliefs, and they start progressing forward, and falling off the bike and getting back on when there's times I've experienced these, and I know other clients have too, when they maybe change their rates or move into a different echelon of clientele that they're wanting to bring in. And they start giving out these new rates, like, getting a lot more no's than yeses, and that can be almost defeating. Like, man, am I doing it right? And then those limiting beliefs start kicking in because, you hear this stuff and it's like, yeah, awesome. Okay, I'm going to be practical and I'm going to apply this. And then you start to apply it, and maybe you had greater expectations than what reality is bringing to you. What have those moments been like for you, or do you still experience those?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's always a continual process, because any time we're taking new actions or taking new steps, essentially we have a home of comfortability, and there's like a stepping outside that into something new. And so that's why I focus on momentum and progress instead of these almost like these big shifts and changes, because and sometimes those big shifts and changes are often perpetuated by feeling like we've been tolerating stuff for a while and it's been building up. So then we make a big change. So in terms of, someone wanting to raise their rates and money, I would recommend that, if they think of their calendar or their schedule as having a certain amount of spots during the day or during the week, it may be an element of playing around with what the new rate is, communicating that. And I recommend always practice in the background first. So when they're at home or they're, looking in the mirror, getting ready in the morning or in the shower, actually practice what it is that you want to say first, because other people can feel your energy. If you're raising your new rate, I think you said maybe 200 or 300 an hour for some of the people in the industry, maybe higher than they're used to or higher than the standard. And if they're saying 300 an hour and they're going, it'll be 300, people are picking up on that. So yeah, it's so people are picking up on that. So number one, you want to just kind of work out your energy. And whenever we go to do something live, there's always going to be an energy there. So we just want to do as best we can to almost like normalize it, right? Because we receive in our life what we make normal. And so it's as if, someone maybe wants to speak more enthusiastically or present. At first, they may feel like they're faking it, but really what's happening is they just are so not used to speaking enthusiastically that it's a different energy. And so it's not yet normal. And so the more that they do it, the more normal it'll feel. So if they're going around their home, and I'm sure there's certain language that you give them or you have when you are sharing the prices with someone, and chances are the language doesn't need to be changed just because it's a higher price. It's just a different number. They can get used to saying it. Yeah, it's 300 for this, and what we'll do is blah, 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 blah. And so whatever the language is that they would normally use, just practice that with the new number. And so there's that first phase of just, sort of making it automatic for themselves to be able to say that. And then to look at, chances are if they want to raise their rate, they already are getting so many clients at, a rate that they now want to change. And so they just get to test it out. Maybe they don't need to say it to everyone, but maybe they do it for like a certain percentage of spots. So that way they can start to feel more acquainted. And there are going to be people that say no, or they might say it's too much. And there's almost an ability to be there with the energy without, blaming oneself, like, oh, I fucked this one up. Or, because they might, if it was this much lower, they would have done it. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's funny because you said some people, oh, that's too much. It's so like when someone comes at me like that, I always tell them like, hey, my pricing ain't personal. And now it's not. And me saying that doesn't have any strings attached to it, and it doesn't feel personal saying it. And it's like, all right, but I remember early on, I would get offended or feel like I caused harm because they took offense to like my prices. And the old saying goes, if you point the finger at someone, you got three pointing back at you. And the reason why that hurts so much is because I used to be the person that would always look for the hookup or the cheaper price, and didn't respect the price. I would always say like, yeah, I'm a hustler, but I didn't really respect the hustle. And it wasn't until I started like looking at my personal relationship with money that I actually did start respecting the hustle and respecting people's prices and realizing that it isn't personal. And you said moments ago, try practicing changing the number. And I was getting ready to interrupt you and say like, because that's all it is. It's just a number, right? Because it's just a number, and it's up to the individual that is, they're talking to if they want to choose this number or not. And if they don't, it's all right, because there's almost 8 billion people in the world right now, and there's more than enough skin to go around. And some people are getting really bad tattoos that are going to need cover-up. So that's job security for us, But it's just a number, and it's getting back to that like simplicity and practicality of it. It's like, these are just numbers. So yeah, go carry on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's totally cool. And I think what you're noticing is that there's a natural occurrence for people with money, because even when you have more money, right? So just on a customer perspective, even when you have more money, you start to look at higher price stuff, and there's still feelings that come up with that, right? So, let's say someone is, has so many clients and they're making so much a month, and then they raise their rates. And then they start having more money in their life. They're going to look at more opportunities, more things, more items. And because they haven't spent as much money on or that amount before, it's still going to have a little bit of a charge. And so what we can see is if you're able to almost, I don't want to say like differentiate yourself, but almost create a spaciousness between you and the other person, right? Because there's this element of taking it personally, which, when we're doing something new, we can recognize that is maybe almost like a go-to, right? Like they're going to raise their prices again in the future, and that may be the same thing that comes up just because it's in some old like programming.
It has with me every time. Rather I went from $50 an hour to $100 to $2K a day. No matter what it is, the feeling is still like it was back when the number wasn't as big.
Right, and so what's happening is you start to, when you have this awareness, you start to get familiar with yourself and just some old patterns that sometimes come up when it can feel like maybe there's, the like fight or flight situation, or there's some fear. And so having awareness of that, you start to sort of like have an awareness going into these of, okay, in the past, maybe I thought these, let me just, be kind to myself. Let me take a breath. And, you can share the new number, and you'll be able to notice that on the other side, they're having their own relationship with money. And they may have thought a number coming in. And so there's different methods that you can approach things. Some people might say, this is my number, that's it. You either want it or you don't, or it's not personal. It's, this is the price of the service. If earlier in my career, I charge less. If you want lower, you could go to someone else that's earlier in their career. So that could be one way. Another thing you can do is to simply check in with the person. It might be as simple as, oh, wow, thanks for letting me know that this is more than you expected. Just, out of curiosity, how much were you expecting to spend? Because you don't know how informed that person is in terms of getting a tattoo and, the cost of that. And they might say, oh, I was expecting $100 an hour. Meanwhile, in their mind, they actually might be prepared to spend $3K or more. And they just have an idea of how long something will take or whatever it may be. And so you get to choose. There's no specific right or wrong. It's really identifying what works for you. I had mentors in the past that were very much, hey, this is what you charge and you can take it or leave it. And they just move on to the next person. They had an amazing ability to create conversations. When I was starting out, I didn't feel as strong in creating conversations. That was a big thing that I had to work through. And so, maybe I did have a number, and what I'd end up doing is, I'd have a standard rate that I charged. And then, maybe I did try out the new one, and maybe it didn't go as planned. And, that presents a choice. Am I so firm on the new number? Could I just see that it's maybe this person who can't pay it, or that's their situation? I could test for some beliefs. Do they have the money and they just have some beliefs? And that's another conversation. Or do I want to say, what? This is what I typically charge, but here, let's do this for you. And so they get to pay, they get to play with it to be whatever they want. And so they could even have their standard rate and just choose a few spots that are like premium items, or they could have their spots and then choose certain ones that maybe they find like a win-win. That's something that it could be really useful, is having a couple spots for people that it's their way of giving back. Maybe they really enjoy the person and they're like, what? I really love this person. This is like a really cool project to me, or like really cool artistry. Let's figure something out here. It just depends on where they're at in their journey. As they start to fill the spots, they'll be able to be more selective, and it won't feel as much of a hit when someone doesn't accept the new rate.
I like it. And, you said checking in with them, kind of like how you're doing during this conversation,
Yep.
So I appreciate that. And it's not only showing compassion to one's to the individual, ourselves, but now you're extending it to the client or potential client or individual who's coming to get your services. I was at Hell City a couple weeks ago, which is like a great convention, and there's a gentleman there. He's one of our students in TBM, and I can't remember what he said. He said he don't like the word client because it's like icky.
Yeah.
He said something else, and I can't remember, but I remember hearing him say it, and then I walked away and then had to come back to him a couple hours again. I was like, I heard what you said, and I really appreciate that. And I can't for the life of me remember what he said. But it just, it took, it made the client, quote unquote, a human again, because that word, it's just, I mean, I guess it's professional, but in which we're professionals, but there's something else. I'm gonna have to reach out to him and figure out what it is. But I appreciate you saying, like, yeah, checking in, because you never know. And I've been guilty of, like, a particular person coming in and I'm judging from their appearance, like, yeah, they ain't gonna be able to afford this, and being completely wrong, which I enjoy being wrong in a scenario like that. But also, it's unfair of me to, like, judge someone off what I think from my limiting beliefs about their appearance,
Yep. Yeah. And so this gets to be, and I love the, not having to refer to them as clients. I had a coach who would call them partners in expansion. That's what he would call his clients, because he said, we're both growing, we're both expanding through the coaching that we're doing. And, there's an element here. I think I might have just lost my thought. Where, yeah, I was just, you had just ended on something.
This is always fun. These moments right here are funny because, like, later tonight, if we don't remember it, it'll be 6 a.m. and I'll wake up out of a dead sleep and I'll be like, that's what the fuck we were trying to think of.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was talking about being at Hell City, and a guy in TBM calls this client something else, and I couldn't remember what it was.
Yep.
And then you have a mentor that partners in expansion.
Yep. Cool. So I'm just going to run with whatever is coming through, because maybe this is it.
Yeah.
Always acknowledge where you're at on your journey, because there's all different places that people are. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So where you are on your journey, no matter what, you get to be of service. So what you're doing is, instead of, necessarily, and I think we can all have, like, some judgments, right? Where it can be, maybe how the person's dressed or how they present themselves. There can be some judgments on money. What begins to shift, though, when you focus strictly on service, you get to come from a place of almost this idea of testing or having a pulse on where somebody is at, and starting to get a sense of that, not in a way of, hey, how much money can I get out of this, but in a way of, what is it that they're wanting to do? What is it that they're wanting to create? What's the budget that you're working with, and what can we do here? And really evaluating that to say, am I the person to help them? Yeah, I could probably help them for this amount, or it might be directing them to someone else. It just depends on, that's how I think of things. I have conversations with people all the time, and I strictly want to be of help. So I always invite people to conversations, and, sometimes they may hear a rate depending on the work that they want to do, and they may not be able to do that. And I don't try and, go through a big convincing or objection handling or all those things. It's just an honesty of, that this is my rate. And, if you can't do that, that's okay. I may have someone that could actually really help you out with what you need. Or it might be an element of, hey, with the money that you got now, here's what we could do. And then when you have some more money, what we can add this on. And it ends up being a way to just be of service, keep a pulse. So we aren't having to filter, do I want to work with this person? Don't I want to work with this person? If they seem like a good person, you get to be of service. If they, don't seem like a kind person, you may just be like, what, I don't think that's something I can help with. And then you get to move it along. So the more people that they connect with, they'll just have a pulse of where they're at, what they, and where you two can come together to expand.
Yeah, man. And I appreciate that. And you said being of service, and it's like, one, yeah, I guess we are in the service industry, and it is a luxury service at that. But
Yeah.
also, the kind of service I think about when I hear you say that is just like the selfless kind that, like, unfortunately, I had to be taught or reminded through a bunch of pain and misery and people being of service to me when I was at my lowest point. But just being of service, even if that means that, like, you know, you said if one person might kind of suck and you may not want to work with them, and that's all right. And not taking that personal, or if the individual really wants that piece but can't afford it, and they don't take your pricing personal, but that's just not in the cards for them right now. I've been known to actually help them find a right artist, even if there's not one that's in our own shop. You know, I'm always down to, like, help you hunt and help you, inform you on what you need to look for. If you don't come to our shop and you plan on going out and venturing to this place, or if you're getting ready to move and I can't get you in my books in time, and these are some things you should look for when looking for a new tattoo artist, you know, because ultimately, I like money and I like to get paid, but I want the individual to get a really nice, dope piece that they're going to admire and love the rest of their life.
Definitely. And I always like to sort of like uncouple this concept of service, because sometimes people can confuse serving and pleasing. And we don't want to just please people. You know, service is usually being very honest. You know, I had a call with someone earlier today, and you know, there's an element that, you know, they said they didn't have the money to do the work together. And so, you know, a lot of times what people are taught in sales is a lot of these objections and how do I handle this, and let me know each single response. And I just say, you know, that's cool. You know, when you got the money, we can talk more if you want. And that's, you know, that's perfectly fine. And, you know, I'll probably reconnect with them in like 3 months or so, or 2 to 3 months. And it's, you know, there's always ways you can influence and manipulate if you really want someone to take action. But really, we want that action to come from within them.
Right.
And so sometimes being of service can also be someone sitting with the pain of them not having the money for it. That actually might be the thing that gets them to say, I really want to create this money, and this is the tattoo I want and who I want it from. And that's what they do.
Wow, I appreciate that, dude, because that's like a self-challenge, you know. I've heard Matt, which has joined us, by the way.
Hey there.
Hey, Brother James. So good to have you back.
He's been known to, like, you know, tell a client, like, well, when I first got the opportunity to sit with him and learn and kind of watch over his shoulder, at the end of that, or the following day, we were like linking up our schedules, and I asked him his rates, and he told me, and I was like, man, could I like give you this much and then like give you a little bit more, and then when I show up, like, pay it off? And he was like, well, you know, we're not piggy banks, you know, we're just tattoo artists, but I would challenge you to save that money yourself, and once you reach that amount, then come and holler at me, and we'll totally get you in and get you booked. But how you're talking, like, if he wasn't even to say that, who knows, like, the pain of me not being able to afford something that I want from someone, and now it's a personal challenge to, like, well, if I really want it, then I'm going to save because, like, I want it, and like, I now I have an end goal in mind. I'm not left in limbo wondering, like, oh, what could the price be? Now I know the price, so now I save up for the price.
Yeah, and either one is fine in terms of the communication. You know, I think that's that was a beautiful communication, to be able to, you know, let the person know, like, you know, that'd actually be a really amazing thing probably for you to save that money.
And he didn't come at me blunt like that. He came in, like, you know, the loving way he carries a message. Because at this time, we weren't homies yet. We were just still, like, in our infant stages. But it was way nicer than how I conveyed it.
Well, and I think, you just get to connect with your soul. Some people have, um, a very like just loving and like very poetic demeanor and in communication and you know what? I feel like a lot of things are very much like we all have certain skills. And so as that skill is built, it'll become more comfortable and you'll find your words that match the way that you communicate to people. And then also like that person, like you start to feel like a certain energy. And so I think that, being able to do that, to let someone else, sort of like sit with their feelings and their experience, because it's a natural human tendency, to bring that, right? To say, oh, you know what, if I do this, could we do that? And that might be the level of commitment that we know or what has worked. And then someone else, says, actually, here you go. What if you come up with that money, and when you have it, you come in. And so what it does is it allows a person to really have their own full experience of where they're at in their life, their choices, and how they operate, and they get to choose how they want to operate next.
Man, skin in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And and especially when there's the relationship with money, higher numbers can feel like they have more of a charge. And so again, this idea of just in the background, begin to practice for yourself. If the higher numbers feel challenging, if they feel like they have a big charge, write them down, say them aloud, and they'll start to feel more normal. And just a heads up, I have like 2 or 3 minutes left.
Matt, do you have any questions? Dude, one, I got to acknowledge you again. I've been acknowledging him left and right this whole time. Okay, so I haven't ridden my bike in a couple months, and I'm riding it tonight, and usually I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm obsessing and compulsing. But I just remembered, like, listening to you talk, I'm like, oh, I get to ride tonight. I'm like, yeah, fuck that. Like, I'm in the present right now. So I want to acknowledge you for, like, letting me be in the present and making me feel comfortable and, like, keeping me at the edge of my seat.
Absolutely. That's I received that. Thank you.
I love that. There's that word receive again.
Man, we've got awareness, practical. Like it's like Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse.
Okay.
Ah!
And you know what? I'll leave the listeners off with, and you guys is, awareness is a really powerful thing, because awareness is actually opening up to what's there. And if we don't believe that something is there, then we aren't open to it. And so just the idea of the internet, right? The internet was always there. Our awareness to it and the availability of it was not at a level in the past. So we didn't have access. So as they continue their growth, as they listen to these podcasts, what will start to open up is a raised awareness of what's possible for them in their life, the numbers that they can reach, actually communicating that to themselves, being kind to themselves. And what starts to happen is they'll start to get access to things that they didn't even know were there before, right? Because when we move forward, we often only see what we're losing, not what we're gaining. And as they begin to make this progress, they'll start to discover things that they didn't even know were there. And that is, just a demonstration of awareness of, now we have an internet and people can communicate. But back in the day, people thought that was like a ridiculous thing and wouldn't ever occur.
I love that. They'll discover things they didn't even know was there. When we hold integrity and stick to our guns, we're actually empowering others for the possibility and opportunity of choice. And if they get empowered and still want to sit in your chair, now they've got to raise something in their awareness, their charge, James said, to maybe even discover things about themselves that they weren't even aware was possible for them until a brother like you almost challenged them to. If you want to sit in the hips chair, you got to come correct, right? Which is so beautiful. You know, we're all guilty of judging a book by its cover. I remember there's a girl that came in to consult with me, and I already predetermined she can't afford me. But I love it when I'm wrong, James. And at the time, on the moment, I was right, because when I quoted her, might as well have been $10 million, and she sunk like defeated. What do you do for a living, homie? She delivers Domino's pizzas. What's an average tip? She told me $3. My heart broke. These motherfuckers out here don't nobody know how to tip anymore. Like, really, right? But you know what? I empowered her on that day. I didn't shrink, and I believed in her, and I said, honey, even if you go away and save up, when you are ready, the day you come back, that'll be your day, and we will celebrate with. Don't you know that like a year and a half, almost 2 years later, she came back and booked her appointment. Do you know the self-worth that she had and the self-respect and how much more her tattoo meant to her? Not just because she was able to come up with all the money, but who she became in the process along the way and what she had to do to even get it to come to my chair. And don't you know, boys, I gave that girl my all, went above and beyond. And as if that wasn't beautiful enough, at the end of the session, she reached in her purse, pulled out a Ziploc baggie lined with all nickels across the bottom as my tip. And she was a little ashamed, but handed it to me proud and said, I don't have much left, but I wanted to tip you, and gave me a Ziploc bag of nickels. Don't you know that tip was worth more to me than almost any other tip I've ever gotten? This is a girl who gave her all, and she was so empowered. And I thank God I had the maturity and the fortitude to not rob her of that.
Wow, I love that.
Yes.
And that is service.
Yes, versus pleasing. Man, we could do a whole show on the distinction between service and pleasing. That's powerful. You know, it was fun, James. I was just sat down here and I got a text from a legend in our industry. His name's Russ Abbott, who let me know he was currently listening to last week's episode with you on it and was really enjoying it. And I texted him back like, well, that's cool because we got him back on for part 2 right now. I'm podcasting. That's awesome. I'll talk to you in a little bit. So it's awesome.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. That's the actual artist. It's funny. He reached out to him because on Circle, he was like, every tattoo artist needs to listen to this. Yeah. Talking about our episode because I shared it on there.
Oh, tight. Okay.
So that's dope. Yeah, dude.
Wow.
Thank you, James, for serving us from your table once again, brother.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been awesome, and I love you guys.
Oh, I love you too, brother. Big time. And of course, like always, we're going to hopefully Mike can drop in the show notes ways to get in contact with James for anyone that would like to have their own one-on-one conversation with James on the possibility of working with him in his coaching program and helping grow through and get through their money stories as well. Are you okay with that, James?
Yeah, that's totally cool. And, I may have something for your listeners, if they need help with conversations and just how do you start a conversation, or they have, they have some reservations there or some personal stuff that comes up and really how to engage with others. I may have a video or two that I could share that may help them. So I'll connect with you afterwards and see the best way to give them the access to that.
James, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you.
Man, Hip, you did great today. We made history today. Today's the first show that Hip held it down on his own with a special guest, James. Well, we'll see. I'll tell you after I listen to it.
It's questionable. It's out for debate right now, right?
Okay. To all our listeners and our fans, thank you so much. Definitely write us this week. Let us know. Let Hip know how he did. It takes courage to do this, especially on his own with Master Brother James. We love you all. Thanks for your faithful support, love, your comments, tuning in, like and subscribe, and sharing these episodes. We'll see you all next week.